The world is on edge tonight, June 22, 2025, following a major American military operation in the Middle East. President Donald J. Trump has confirmed that he ordered a series of airstrikes against 3 of Iran's most critical nuclear facilities. This unprecedented action marks a dramatic escalation in the long-simmering tensions between Washington and Tehran. The strikes, which occurred under the cover of darkness, represent the first time the United States has directly targeted Iran's nuclear infrastructure. President Trump announced the move on his Truth Social platform, calling the mission a historic success aimed at preventing Iran from acquiring a nuclear weapon, a goal he has long stated is a red line for his administration. This bold move did not happen in a vacuum. It follows a volatile period of escalating conflict that began on June 13, 2025, when Israel launched its own attacks against Iranian military and scientific targets. While those strikes reportedly killed senior Iranian commanders and several nuclear scientists, U.S. intelligence determined they were not enough to neutralize Iran's most fortified nuclear site at Fordow. President Trump, who had initially leaned toward diplomatic solutions, reportedly changed his stance after a critical briefing from top military advisors on June 8. The decision was made to take direct action, shifting the regional conflict from a proxy war to a direct confrontation between the United States and Iran. The targeted sites, Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan, are the cornerstones of Iran's nuclear ambitions. Fordow, built deep inside a mountain, is considered the most difficult to destroy. Natanz is a major hub for uranium enrichment, while Esfahan is crucial for converting raw uranium into a form suitable for enrichment. For years, these locations have been at the center of international debate and inspections, with the International Atomic Energy Agency, or IAEA, finding uranium enriched to near weapons-grade levels at Fordow in the past. President Trump's order to strike these specific locations sends a clear and unmistakable message. The United States will not permit Iran's nuclear program to advance any further. The immediate aftermath has been a flurry of official statements and emergency meetings across the globe. In Washington, the decision has ignited a fierce political debate, splitting lawmakers along party lines and raising constitutional questions about the president's authority to authorize such an attack without congressional approval. For the American public and the world, the central question now is what comes next. The strikes have undeniably set back Iran's nuclear capabilities, but they have also opened the door to a new and dangerous chapter in the Middle East, with the potential for widespread conflict and severe consequences for global stability, diplomacy, and the safety of American personnel in the region. The military operation itself was a display of advanced American air power, executed with precision across thousands of miles. The primary assets in the strike were B-2 Spirit stealth bombers, which took off from Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri. These iconic bat-winged aircraft are designed to penetrate sophisticated enemy air defenses without being detected, making them ideal for a high-stakes mission of this nature. They were supported by a formidable array of fighter jets, including F-22S, F-16S, and F-35S, which were already deployed to U.S. bases in the region. This combined force ensured the bombers had a clear path to their targets deep inside Iranian territory. To destroy Iran's heavily fortified nuclear sites, the U.S. military relied on one of its most powerful conventional weapons, the GBU-57 Massive Ordnance Penetrator, or MOP. Each of these bunker-buster bombs weighs an astonishing 30,000 pounds and is specifically engineered to burrow through dozens of feet of earth and reinforced concrete before detonating. The goal was not just to damage the facilities, but to obliterate them entirely, particularly the underground Fordow plant, which was built to withstand conventional airstrikes. The use of such a specialized and destructive weapon underscores the seriousness with which the Pentagon viewed the threat posed by these specific Iranian sites. The mission focused on 3 key locations central to Iran's nuclear program. The first target, Fordow, was the highest priority due to its hardened subterranean structure. U.S. officials later claimed that the strikes had successfully taken it off the table. The second site was the sprawling Natanz enrichment plant, which has long been a focal point of international inspections and sabotage efforts. The third was the Esfahan Nuclear Technology Center, a facility involved in the early stages of the nuclear fuel cycle. By hitting all 3, the Pentagon aimed to cripple Iran's ability to produce enriched uranium at every major stage of the process, from conversion to enrichment. Following the operation, President Trump declared the mission 100% successful, a sentiment echoed by military officials who confirmed that all American aircraft had returned to their bases safely. The swiftness and apparent success of the strikes highlight the strategic planning and technological superiority of the U.S. Air Force. However, Iranian state media offered a conflicting narrative, claiming that the targeted sites had been evacuated beforehand and that no radioactive materials were present. Regardless of the exact level of damage, the attack has fundamentally altered the strategic landscape, demonstrating a new American willingness to use direct force to achieve its non-proliferation goals. The news of the American airstrikes on Iran has sent shockwaves across the globe, drawing a sharp and predictable line between allies who praised the action and adversaries who condemned it. In the United States, the reaction was deeply polarized. Many Republicans, including prominent figures like Senator Lindsey Graham and House Speaker Mike Johnson, lauded President Trump's decision as strong and necessary. Senator Graham remarked that Trump did what Biden wouldn't, framing the attack as a decisive move to protect American and Israeli security interests. This viewpoint was shared by many who believed that years of diplomacy had failed to curb Iran's nuclear ambitions, leaving military action as the only viable option. On the other side of the aisle, the criticism from Democrats was swift and severe. They argued that President Trump had bypassed Congress and potentially violated the War Powers Act, which limits a president's ability to commit the U.S. to an armed conflict without congressional consent. This concern was not limited to Democrats. Some conservative voices like Representatives Thomas Massie and Marjorie Taylor Greene also expressed alarm, warning that the strikes could recklessly drag the United States into a massive and costly war in the Middle East. These critics emphasized the risk of an uncontrolled escalation that could endanger American troops and destabilize the entire region for years to come. Internationally, the response was just as divided. Israel, a key U.S. ally and Iran's primary regional foe, was the most vocal supporter of the operation. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reportedly spoke with President Trump shortly after the strikes, and former Israeli officials praised the bold decision. For Israel, the attack represents a significant victory in its long-standing campaign to prevent a nuclear-armed Iran. The Israeli government sees the American intervention as a crucial step in neutralizing what it considers an existential threat, reinforcing the strategic alliance between the two nations at a moment of heightened regional tension. However, other major world powers expressed grave concern. Russia and China, both of whom have closer ties to Iran, condemned the U.S. action as a dangerous escalation and a violation of international law. Officials from both countries called for immediate restraint and a return to diplomatic channels. The United Nations Secretary General also voiced deep alarm over the potential for a wider conflict and urged all parties to step back from the brink. This international split highlights the precarious state of global geopolitics, with the U.S. and its allies on one side and a bloc of opposing nations on the other, leaving the future of Middle East stability hanging in the balance. In the immediate wake of the U.S. airstrikes, the most pressing concern is the threat of Iranian retaliation. Tehran has vowed a severe response, and its state-controlled media has already declared that American military bases throughout the Middle East are now within fire range. This rhetoric has put U.S. forces on their highest level of alert. The Pentagon is bracing for potential attacks, which could come in many forms: direct missile strikes from Iran, assaults by its powerful regional proxies like Hezbollah in Lebanon or the Houthis in Yemen, or even covert operations targeting American citizens or assets abroad. In a sign of the perceived danger, the State Department has already begun evacuating non-essential personnel and American citizens from Israel. The strikes have also effectively shattered any remaining hope for a diplomatic resolution to the nuclear issue. The years of painstaking negotiations that led to past agreements are now a distant memory. By opting for military force, the Trump administration has signaled a definitive break from the path of diplomacy, a move that will have long-lasting consequences. It will be incredibly difficult for any future administration to rebuild the trust necessary to bring Iran back to the negotiating table. This reality leaves the world with fewer options to peacefully manage Iran's nuclear program, potentially locking the two nations into a permanent cycle of confrontation and conflict. The legal and constitutional debate within the United States is another significant fallout from this event. Critics argue that President Trump's order to strike Iran without explicit approval from Congress oversteps his authority and undermines the separation of powers. This debate over the War Powers Act is not new, but it has been reignited with exceptional intensity given the scale of this operation and the risk of a full-blown war. The outcome of this debate could set a powerful precedent for how future presidents wield American military power, shaping the balance between the executive and legislative branches for generations to come. Ultimately, this situation matters to everyone, not just those living in the Middle East. A wider war could have devastating consequences for the global economy, disrupting oil supplies and sending energy prices soaring. It would risk the lives of thousands of American service members and destabilize a region already fraught with conflict, potentially creating new waves of refugees and empowering extremist groups. President Trump is scheduled to address the nation later tonight, and the world will be listening intently. His words, and Iran's subsequent actions, will determine whether this bold strike was a calculated move to ensure peace or the first shot in a catastrophic new war.